Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We continue reading from Canto 5 of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 14. We are on text 16. We have been hearing by Sukadev Goswami how the traveler, the living entity who is the traveler in the forest of the material world, and how in the forest there are different living entities that trouble one. So similarly, how in the life there are different living entities who are there creating disturbances, like someone who's envious, so they're called like crickets, like that. So kvachit kala vishamita rajakula raksha sapaharata priyatama.
क्वचित् कालविषमिता राजकुलरक्षसा अप्रहत प्रियतमः
Dhanasu pramritaka iva vigata jiva lakshana aste.
धन असुप्रमतक इवा विगत जीवलक्षण आसते.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Government men are always like carnivorous demons called Rakshasas, man-eaters. Sometimes these government men turn against the conditioned soul and take away all his accumulated wealth. Being bereft of his life's reserved wealth, the conditioned soul loses all enthusiasm. Indeed, it is as though he loses his life. The word Rajakula Rakshasa is very significant. Srimad Bhagavatam was compiled about 5,000 years ago. Yet, government men are referred to as Rakshasas or carnivorous demons. If government men are opposed to a person, that person will be bereft of all his riches, which he has accumulated with great care over a long period of time. Actually, no one wants to pay income taxes. Even government men themselves try to avoid these taxes. But at unfavorable times, income taxes are exacted forcibly, and the taxpayers become very morose. So this is like the modern times, how the government don't want to give protection but just take taxes from the citizens. Kadachin manoratho pagata pitre pita mahadi asat sat iti swapna.
कदाचित् मनोरथ उद्गत पितृपितामह आदि असत् सत्पित्र
Nirvriti lakshanam anubhavati.
निर्वति लक्षणम् अनुभवति.
Sometimes the conditioned soul imagines that his father or grandfather has again come in the form of his son or grandson. In this way, he feels the happiness one sometimes feels in a dream, and the conditioned soul sometimes takes pleasure in such mental concoctions. Due to ignorance of the real existence of the Lord, the conditioned soul imagines many things. Influenced by fruitive activity, he comes together with his relatives, fathers, sons, and grandfathers, exactly as straws gather together in a moving stream. In a moment, the straws are thrown everywhere and they lose contact. In conditional life, the living entities temporarily, with many other souls, they gather together as family members, and the material affection is so strong that even after a father or grandfather passes away, one takes pleasure in thinking that they return to the family in different forms. Sometimes this may happen, but in any case, the conditioned soul likes to take pleasure in such concocted thoughts. Yeah, it's true. Many families, we do that. Some elder passes away, and then there is another child born in the family. Then we think, oh, maybe, this one has come back. Sometimes it may be true, sometimes it may not. Yes, Sukadev Goswami is saying such mental concoctions, and we take pleasure in such mental concoctions. Kvachit grahashrama karma chodanati bharagirim arurukshmano.
क्वचिद् ग्रह आश्रमः कर्मचोदन् अतिभर गिरिम् अधिरोक्षमाण
Loka vyasana karshita mana kantaka sharkara kshetram pravisha iva siddhati.
लोकव्यसनकर्षितं मनः कण्टकशर्कराक्षेत्रं प्रविशन् इव सिदति.
In household life, one is ordered to execute many yagyas and fruitive activities, especially the Viva Yagya, the marriage ceremony for sons and daughters, and the sacred thread ceremony. These are all the duties of a grahast, and they are very extensive and troublesome to execute. They are compared to a big hill over which one must cross when one is attached to material activities. A person desiring to cross over these ritualistic ceremonies certainly feels pains like the piercing of thorns and pebbles endured by one attempting to climb a hill. Thus, the conditioned soul suffers unlimitedly. There are many social functions for keeping a prestigious position in society. In different countries and societies, there are various festivals and rituals. In India, the father is supposed to get his children married. When he does so, his responsibility to the family is complete. Arranging marriages is very difficult, especially in these days. Already Prabhupada is saying so many years ago that arranging marriage is so difficult in these days. At the present moment, no one can perform the proper ritual of sacrifice, nor can anyone afford to pay for the marriage ceremony of sons and daughters. Therefore, householders are very much distressed when they are confronted by these social duties. It is as though they were pierced by thorns and hurt by pebbles. Material attachment is so strong that despite the suffering, one cannot give it up. Prahlad Maharaj therefore recommends in Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Canto 7, Chapter 5, Text 5, Hitvatma Hitvatma Patam Graham Andakupam Vanam Gato Yadharim Ashrayeta. The so-called comfortable family position is compared to a dark well in a field. If one falls in a dark well covered by grass, his life is lost, especially despite his cry for rescue. Highly advanced spiritualists therefore recommend that one should not enter the Grahast ashram. It is better to prepare oneself in the Brahmacharya ashram for austerities and remain a pure brahmachari throughout one's life so that one will not feel the piercing thorns of material life in the Grahast ashram. So, Prabhupada would say that he wanted all his female disciples, women disciples to get married, and all the male disciples to remain brahmacharis. Then how to do it? Because everyone cannot remain lifelong brahmachari, they will get married. But Prabhupada would say, yes, all the women should get married, But here we are seeing that, one should not enter family life. But it's like very few people can avoid entering the family life, remain lifelong brahmachari. Majority still, will get married to feel stable, to be able to function well in society. So in the Grahast ashram, one has to accept invitations from friends and relatives and perform ritualistic ceremonies. By doing so, one becomes captivated by such things. Although he may not have sufficient resources to continue them. To maintain the Grahast lifestyle, one has to work very hard to acquire money. Thus, one is implicated in material life and he suffers the thorn pricks. Any questions, comments?
No, it looks clear.
All right. Thank
So
you.
even Prabhupada, right? He got married and then he left, right?
Yeah. Prabhupada was married also.
Married, no?
He his family duties were over, then he left the home, took sannyas. He was a grahast. Many acharyas in our line, they were grahast. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a grahast.
Yeah.
Then Advaita Acharya himself, Srivas Thakur, they were grahastas. Lord Nityananda also had married and had children. You know. So in this age, it's not very easy for somebody to remain like lifelong brahmachari. So they were also setting an example that you can get married and as well engage in devotional service. So they set an example for us.
And how it says, it's so, it's very, you need a lot of money, well, to get your child married. There's too many
Yeah,
rituals, Yeah, it's,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's true, no?
Hmm. Kanyadan, no, they say it's a responsibility. I mean, it's for,
Kanyadan,
yeah,
yeah, is one of the
it's a
samskar, one of the yagya, right?
yeah, yeah, to do.
Yeah.
Mm.
क्वचिच्च दुह सहेना काया भयंतर वहेना गृहीत सारस्व
क्वचित् च दुःसेना काय अभयन्तर्वहीना
Charitamrita
गृहीतसारस्वकुटुम्बाय क्रुध्यति
कुटुम्बाय क्रोधयति.
Kutumbaya Krudayati.
कुटुम्बाय क्रुधयति
Sometimes, due to bodily hunger and thirst, the conditioned soul becomes so disturbed that he loses his patience and becomes angry with his own beloved sons, daughters, and wife. Thus, being unkind to them, he suffers all the more. Sri Vidyapati Thakur has sung, Tatala Saikate Vari Bindu Samaj Sutamita Ramani Samaje. The happiness of family life is compared to a drop of water in the desert. No one can be happy in family life. According to the Vedic civilization, one cannot give up the responsibilities of family life. But today, everyone is giving up family life by divorce. This is due to the miserable condition experienced in the family. Sometimes, due to misery, one becomes very hardened toward his affectionate sons, daughters, and wife. This is but part of the blazing fire of the forest of material life. Yeah, it's true. We see now that, but sometimes it may be so difficult to stay in the family that they need to separate. The husband and wife need to separate or something. स एव पुनर्निद्रा जगरगृहीतो दे तमसि मग्न शून्यारण्य
स
Eva
एव
Punarnidra
पुण्यनिद्रा
Jagara
अजगरः गृहीत
Ande
अन्ते
Tamasi
तमसि मग्नशून्य शून्य अरण्येः
इव शेते नान्यत् किञ्चन वेद शव इवापविद्धः
इव
Iva
ते
Shete
न
Nanya
अन्यत् किञ्चन
Kinchana
वेदे शव इव
Vedas Shava
अविद्दः
Avidyaha.
Sukadev Goswami continued speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, My dear king, sleep is exactly like a python. Those who wander in the forest of material life are always devoured by the python of sleep. By being bitten by this python, they always remain in the darkness of ignorance. They are like dead bodies thrown in a distant forest. Thus, the conditioned souls cannot understand what is going on in life. Material life means being fully absorbed in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Out of these, sleep is taken very seriously, while asleep, one completely forgets the object of life and what to do.
वहीं पे पड़ा हुआ होगा
For,
या इधर कमरे में
for
पड़ा हुआ होगा
spiritual for spiritual
सॉरी
realization, no worries. One should try to avoid sleep as much as possible. The Goswamis of Vrindavan practically did not sleep at all. So, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That's what our intelligence is there right now. Our material intelligence, how can I eat nicely, sleep nicely, mate nicely, defend nicely? And here, of course, we are being said when we sleep, we forget everything, can't remember anything. For spiritual realization, one should try to avoid sleep as much as possible. So one may say, well, the Goswamis of Vrindavan practically did not sleep at all. Of course, they slept some, for the body requires sleep, but they slept only about 2 hours, and sometimes not even that. So one may say, well, the Goswami slept only 2 hours, so even I'm going to imitate. But imitation is not going to get us anywhere, we're just going to spoil our own health. So balance, Krishna says, balance. Eat how much ever you need to, sleep how much ever you need to. Some may need 6 hours, so get 6 hours. Some may need 8 hours, so get 8 hours. Be fit, for then the other time we can engage in devotional service. They always engaged in spiritual cultivation. Nidrahara viharakadi vijito. Following in the footsteps of the Goswamis, we should try to reduce sleeping, eating, mating, and defending. So when Prabhupada is saying this, he means saying, avoid overeating, oversleeping, overmeeting, over-defending. Keeping a balance. We reduce sleep, but how much ever we need, and one person may need 8 hours, whereas another is okay with 6. So, kadachit bhagnamana damshtro durjana danda shuker alabdha.
Kadachit Bhagnamana Damstrito Durjana Danda Shuker Alabda
Nidra shano vyathita hridayena nukshiyamana vigyano andha.
Nidraksha Shino Vyatita Hridayena Shiyamana Vijnano Anda
Upendavat patate.
Upenandavat Patati.
In the forest of the material world, the conditioned soul is sometimes bitten by envious enemies, which are compared to serpents and other creatures. Through the tricks of the enemy, the conditioned soul falls from his prestigious position. Being anxious, he cannot even sleep properly. He thus becomes more and more unhappy, and he gradually loses his intelligence and consciousness. In that state, he becomes almost perpetually like a blind man who has fallen into a dark well of ignorance. So, sometimes there's somebody who is envious of someone, and then they may try to harm them. Like how we hear Srivas Thakur. He was having this nightly kirtans in his house, and then some people were very upset, very got envious, and then they kept some things outside his house, untouchable things, trying to spoil his name. But of course, Srivas Thakur, a pure devotee, so they couldn't do any harm to him. Karhi smachit kama madhulavan, vichinvan yada paradara para.
He smachit kama madhu lavan vichin van yada paradara para
Dravyani avarundhano ragya swami bher va nihata patati apare niraye.
Vavyani avarundano ragnya swam bibir va nihata patati apare niraye.
The conditioned soul is sometimes attracted to the little happiness derived from sense gratification. Thus, he has illicit sex or steals another's property. At such a time, he may be arrested by the government or chastised by the woman's husband or protector. Thus, simply for a little material satisfaction, he falls into a hellish condition and is put into jail for rape, kidnapping, theft, and so forth. Material life is such that due to indulgence in sex, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and meat eating, the conditioned soul is always in a dangerous condition. Meat eating and intoxication excite the senses more and more, and the conditioned soul falls victim to women. In order to keep women, money is required, and to acquire money, one begs, borrows, or steals. Indeed, he commits abominable acts that cause him to suffer both in this life and in the next. Consequently, illicit sex must be stopped by those who are spiritually inclined or who are on the path of spiritual realization. Many devotees fall down due to illicit sex. They may steal money and even fall down from the highly honored, renounced order. Then, for a livelihood, they accept menial services and become beggars. It is therefore said in the Shastras, Yan Maithuna Adi Grahamedi Sukham hi tuchha. Materialism is based on sex, whether licit or illicit. Sex is full of dangers, even for those who are addicted to household life. Whether one has a license for sex or not, there is great trouble. Bahu dukha bha. After one indulges in sex, many volumes of miseries ensue. One suffers more and more in material life. A miserly person cannot properly utilize the wealth he has. And similarly, a materialistic person misuses the human form. Instead of using it for spiritual emancipation, he uses the body for sense gratification. Therefore, he is called a miser. So here we are, Sukadev Goswami is saying about illicit sex and what's that? And stealing somebody's property, because one may get carried away. One can go and have affairs with some other people, somebody else's wife, get into the jail, and so on the whole. So a miserly person does not use his wealth. He has so much wealth, but he doesn't use it. Similarly, a human being is called a miser when he has the human body but does not engage in devotional service. Because this human body is very appropriate that we can engage in devotional service. But when we don't, then we are called miser. Just like a miser person, he has money, but he's not spending it. Like that. Athacha tasmat ubha yathapi hi karma asmin atmanah.
Atha cha tasmad upayatapi hi karmasmin atmana
Samsara vapanam udaharanti.
samsaravapanam udaharanti.
Learned scholars and transcendentalists therefore condemn the materialistic path of fruitive activity because it is the original source and breeding ground of material miseries, both in this life and in the next. Not knowing the value of life, karmis create situations whereby they suffer in this life and the next. Unfortunately, karmis are very attached to material sense gratification, and they cannot appreciate the miserable condition of material life, either in this life or in the next. Therefore, the Vedas enjoin that one should awaken to spiritual consciousness and utilize all his activities to attain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, out of ignorance, because we don't understand or what kind of actions we do, what kind of reactions we get, and that we may do this, then we are going to get into so much trouble, so much suffering. We don't understand. So we are not able to understand the value of this human body. So therefore, the Vedas enjoin that one should awaken to spiritual consciousness and utilize all his activities to attain the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So engaging in devotional service and attract the mercy of Krishna. The Lord himself says in Bhagavad Gita 9:27, Yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi, yat tapasyasi kaunteya, tat kurushva mad arpanam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. So Krishna is saying this to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita chapter 9, text 27. He's saying, all that you do for me. All that you eat, you offer to me. Any charity you're giving, anything you're giving, you do it for me. Any austerities you're performing, you perform for me. So do everything as an offering to me, Krishna is saying. And in this way, we will do all sorts of activities and yet not get implicated in the reaction of those activities, not get any karma, becomes a karma. So this is karma yoga. The result of all one's activities should be utilized not for sense gratification, but for the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord gives all information in Bhagavad Gita about the aim of life. And at the end of Bhagavad Gita, he demands surrender unto him. People do not generally like this demand, but one who cultivates spiritual knowledge for many births eventually surrenders unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Bahunam janmanam anti jnanavan mam prapadyate. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying, a very famous verse, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 66, Sarva dharmam parityagya, that abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. Krishna is saying, surrender unto me. This is what Krishna is saying. He's not saying surrender unto something inside me or outside me or beyond me or this of mine or that of mine. No, he's saying just surrender to me. And many people don't like to hear this. But we may not surrender to Krishna now. But Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita in chapter 7, Bahunam janmanamante, that one who is on the path of knowledge may not surrender to me immediately, but after many, many births and deaths, he will surrender to me, understanding that Vasudeva Sarvam Iti, that this Krishna is the Supreme Lord. And such a great person is very rare. One who surrenders to Krishna is very rare. Krishna calls him a Mahatma, a great person. Muktastato yadi bandhat deva data upachinati tasmadape.
Muktastato yadi bandhat devadatta upach chinnati tasmat api.
Vishnu Mitra iti anavasthitihi.
Vishnu Mitra iti anavastitihi.
Stealing or cheating another person out of his money, the conditioned soul somehow or other keeps it in his possession and escapes punishment. Then another man named Devdutt cheats him and takes the money away. Similarly, another man named Vishnumitra steals the money from Devdutt and takes it away. In any case, the money does not stay in one place. It passes from one hand to another. Ultimately, no one can enjoy the money, and it remains the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Riches come from Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, and the goddess of fortune is the property of Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we are always wanting Lakshmi, but we forget Lakshmi Devi is wherever Narayan is, wherever her husband is. Lakshmi Devi, she's a chaste wife, she follows him. The goddess of fortune cannot stay anywhere but by the side of Narayan. Therefore, another of her name is Chanchala, restless. She cannot be peaceful unless she is in the company of her husband. Narayan, for example, Lakshmi was carried away by the materialistic Ravan. Ravan kidnapped Sita, the goddess of fortune belonging to Lord Ram. As a result, Ravan's entire family, opulence, and kingdom was smashed, and Sita the goddess of fortune was recovered from his clutches and reunited with Lord Ram. Thus, all property, riches, and wealth belong to Krishna. Yeah, like Ravan kidnapped Sita, no? Ravan kidnapped Sita and Lord Ram killed him. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 5.29, Bhuktaram Yagyatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the true beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, and he is the supreme proprietor of all the planetary systems. So we may be the owner of our own house, or property, but who's the owner of the entire Earth planet? Who's the owner of the sun, the moon, and so many other planets and the material universe, the entire material universe? It's Krishna. He's the supreme proprietor. By knowing this, we can become peaceful. By understanding that Krishna is the proprietor, Krishna is the controller, and that he's the best friend of every living entity. By understanding this, we can become peaceful. That all the sacrifices and austerities are meant for his pleasure. Foolish materialistic person collect money and steal from other thieves, but they cannot keep it. In any case, it must be spent. One person cheats another, and another person cheats someone else. Therefore, the best way to possess Lakshmi is to keep her by the side of Narayan. This is the point of the Krishna consciousness movement. We worship Lakshmi, Radharani, along with Narayan, Krishna. We collect money from various sources, but that money does not belong to anyone but Radha and Krishna, Lakshmi Narayan. If money is utilized in the service of Lakshmi Narayan, the devotee automatically lives in an opulent way. However, if one wants to enjoy Lakshmi the way Ravan did, he will be vanquished by the laws of nature, and whatever few possessions he has will be taken away. Finally, death will take everything away, and death is the representative of Krishna. So, engaging the money in the service of Lord Krishna. Engaging Lakshmi Devi in the service of Narayan. Keeping Lakshmi next to Narayan. That's how Lakshmi stays. Radha, Krishna. They are the original Lakshmi Narayan. Lakshmi Narayan are expansions of Radha and Krishna. Srimati Radharani, she's the original goddess of fortune. Kvachikcha Shitavata di Aneka di Daivika Bahotika Miyanam.
Kvachich cha sita vatadi anekadi daivika bhautikatmiyanam.
Dashanam Varane Kalpo Duranta Chintaya Vishana Aste.
Dashanam pratinirvarane kalpo duranta chintaya vishana aste.
Being unable to protect himself from the threefold miseries of material existence, the conditioned soul becomes very morose and lives a life of lamentation. These threefold miseries are miseries suffered by mental calamity at the hands of the demigods, such as freezing wind and scorching heat, miseries offered by other living entities, and miseries arising from the mind and body themselves. The so-called happy materialistic person is constantly having to endure the threefold miseries of life called Adidaivika, Adhyatmika, and Adibhautika. So yesterday we were having the topic, right, that some people seem to be very happy, some people seem to be suffering. But here, Sukadev Goswami is saying, even Krishna says it, that at every moment, at any moment, every moment, Each and every one of us is afflicted by any of these three kind of miseries, by our own body or mind, by other living entities, or by material nature. It's constant, every moment. Actually, no one can counteract these threefold miseries. All three may assail one at one time, or one misery may be absent and the other present. So sometimes all may attack one at one time, so we may feel overwhelmed. But otherwise, one is always there. Our own mind and body, misery caused by our own mind and body. We may have this ache, this pain, or some mental stress, or stress caused by another, or the natural calamities. Thus, the living entity is full of anxiety, fearing misery from one side or the other. The conditioned soul must be disturbed by at least one of these three miseries. There is no escape. So it's not that only some people are afflicted by these miseries. No, each and every living entity is afflicted by these miseries at every moment. Because we may think, oh, but how this person is enjoying life? But well, we are seeing them for an hour or two. We don't know what they're doing at home or for the rest of the time. It's not to give any depressive outlook. It's just because yesterday the discussion was going on that how come it seems that someone is suffering and someone is not. But suffering is there for everyone. Maybe degrees, maybe less or greater, to a lesser degree or greater degree. Or someone may not even know that someone's suffering. We may not even know that we are suffering. Kvachin mitho vyavharan yat kinchid danam anebhyo va.
क्वचिन् मितो व्यवहरन् यत् किञ्चित् धनम् अन्येभ्यो वा
काकिनिका मात्रम अपि अपहरन् यत् किंचिद वा विद्वेषम एति वितसाथयात्.
काकिन्निका मात्रम् अपि अपहरन् यत् किञ्चित् वा विधिवेशम् एति वितस्यात्.
As far as transactions with money are concerned, if one person cheats another by a farthing or less, they become enemies. This is called samsara davanala. Even in ordinary transactions between two people, there is invariably cheating because the conditioned soul is defective in four ways. He's illusioned, he commits mistakes, his knowledge is imperfect, and he has a propensity to cheat unless one is liberated from material conditioning. These four defects must be there. Consequently, every man has a cheating propensity, which is employed in business or money transactions. Although two friends may be living peacefully together, due to their propensity to cheat, they become enemies when there is a transaction between them. A philosopher accuses an economist of being a cheater, and an economist may accuse a philosopher of being a cheater when he comes in contact with money. In any case, this is the condition of material life. One may profess a high philosophy, but when one is in need of money, he becomes a cheater. In this material world, so-called scientists, philosophers, and economists are nothing but cheaters in one way or another. The scientists are cheaters because they present so many bogus things in the name of science. They propose going to the moon, but actually they end up cheating the entire public of large sums of money for their experiments. They cannot do anything useful. So Prabhupada would say that maybe they didn't go to the moon, they went to another planet. Or at least the moon that is mentioned in the Bhagavatam, because the moon in the Bhagavatam we hear is a heavenly planet. So it's very beautiful there. It's not that it's just some rocks. So the scientists, they maybe went to another planet. But certainly not the moon that we are hearing about in Bhagavatam. Unless one can find a person transcendental to the four basic defects, one should not accept advice and become a victim of the material condition. So you see, we are all in the conditioned world, on the conditioned platform. We have these 4 defects. So the advice also we give will have the defects. So here we are advised not to accept advice and become victim of the material condition. So then who to take advice from? We all need advice. The best process is to take the advice and instructions of Sri Krishna or his bona fide representative. In this way, one can be happy in this life and the next. So take advice of the pure devotee or take advice from Bhagavad Gita, instructions of Lord Krishna. Because each of us have 4 defects. So, our advice will also have some defects in it. Did you want to add anything?
I think all okay, all clear.
Yeah. So we'll
Yeah.
stop here for today. Thank you so much for listening and joining in. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.